Hello, welcome to the channel Why Stories. Enjoy watching.
There was complete silence in the hall. The only sound breaking it was the rapier striking. A fierce battle was taking place on the fencing strip. The coach paced back and forth with silent steps. The man perfectly understood all the advantages of Ivon Chela, but there was one but. Coach Valeriano Parra was closely watching Ivon's every step. The third duel was underway, and he was winning. Overall, the guy had incredible talent, lightning-fast intuition, speed, and logic. But the coach understood that Ivon Chela had to overcome his fear completely to win. Finally, the last duel came to an end, and the scoreboard showed 15-8 in favor of Ivon. The opponents shook hands, and removing their masks, both approached the coach. "Guys, well done," Valeriano immediately exclaimed. "Salvador, you did very well today. Ivon, we'll talk a bit later." The coach gave feedback on the match and some recommendations to each of the participants. "All right, Ivon, see you." Salvador shook hands with his partner and headed to the locker room. Valeriano Parra himself had once been under the guidance of one of the legendary rapierists, but that person lacked both experience working with people and patience. Therefore, when Valeriano took up coaching, he immediately decided that his first rule would be to respect the individuality of his students. He never crossed that boundary. Valeriano always thanked and encouraged his students, even if their fight was a complete failure. "Ivon, you must understand that there will be real professionals at the championship," the coach began. "What does that mean for you personally? If you don't overcome your complex, victory is unlikely for you. We could settle for celebrating in the 10th or 12th place. But as someone who has performed at such competitions and has years of coaching experience, I can confidently say that you're talented. You must acknowledge that. I openly declare that you are my best student ever. You may not believe in your abilities. Perhaps it would be easier for you to believe me first. So, what is your main and only problem? It's fear. Despite many years of rigorous training, we haven't completely overcome it. Yes, you can easily seize the initiative from your opponent and make a precise strike. But then you seem to stop. In fencing, even a 10th of a second delay is a loss. I fully admit that you have some psychological trauma. Maybe you're associating it with being in a real battle where you can wound or kill your opponent. It's like you're in a state of shock. Again, you've learned to quickly snap out of it, but there's still that instant delay. For example, you executed a series of attacks and earned a point. But from my perspective, if you had acted more confidently, it could have been not just 1 point but at least 2, maybe 3. I understand what you're talking about, Ivon sighed. I can't control it. It's like it happens on a subconscious level. I even catch myself in that moment when I pause. Then I snap back and start attacking again. Honestly, I feel like I made some mistakes. It starts pulling me into it, the guy confessed. Maybe in a past life, I was an excellent warrior and put down more than one opponent on the battlefield. Perhaps that's why I have this feeling. He added with a smile. You know, I have no doubts about it, his coach supported him. The moment you came to training for the first time and took the rapier in your hands, I was shocked. It felt like you were born with it. Ivon, we need to deal with this issue. Let's try to redirect this psychological mechanism in another direction. The guy looked at Valeriano with surprise. Sometimes his coach was unpredictable. What if we redirect the fight not outward but inward, towards yourself? He mysteriously uttered. How so? The fencer scratched his head. Do you want me to imagine that I'm injuring myself instead of my opponent? Not quite, Valeriano pondered. Let's imagine that with each strike you deliver to your opponent, you're destroying something within yourself. For example, your duel is not with Salvador but with yourself. Or rather, with something inside you. Imagine that each new strike weakens your fear more, and you're destroying it. Oh. Ivon sighed. I feel like implementing all of this in practice will not be easy. You'll succeed, I feel it, Valeriano patted him on the shoulder. The key is to start. The student took off his mask and tiredly headed to the locker room. Only now did he feel how draining the fight was. "Don't worry, kid, you'll get through this," the coach whispered. "We'll go through it together." Valeriano understood well that it wouldn't be easy for them to break through. Firstly, the school where he currently coached was located in a small town. Although more than 200,000 people lived there, it was not the capital. Therefore, Valeriano Parra could call his sports club amateur rather than professional. The coach had once lived and performed in the capital, so he knew the opportunities available there. But despite all this, Valeriano had one huge plus: Ivon Chela. He understood that such talented people were rare, as they say, once in a million. And if not for his psychological trauma, they would have submitted an application last year. Ivon left the sports school and headed towards his car. He kept thinking about the coach's words all the time. Ivon was almost 25. He came from a very affluent family, so in terms of material well-being, he had no problems. But something weighed on him from within. The guy decided to stop by his office a bit later. He took out his phone and called. "Rosanna, hi. I'm coming to you," Ivon said. "Listen, I want some coffee. I'm hungry as a wolf after the training." He laughed. Ivon Chela sighed and turned the key in the car. It slowly moved forward. 40 minutes later, the driver was already at the destination. "Ivon." A slender blonde rushed towards him. "Come in quickly," she said, taking him by the hand. The girl led her beloved to the kitchen, and he could feel the aroma of coffee in the air. "Why are you so sad?" the girl asked her boyfriend. "Did you lose the fight today or something?" "No, I won," the guy sighed. "Rosanna, you know, it's like there's some barrier inside me that doesn't let me rise higher. I'm tired of fighting with it. I have no strength left." "Oh my God, just give up that rapier of yours," the blonde replied discontentedly. "You're doing well without it. Your business is thriving, and you're making good money. Let's talk about us instead," she pouted. "Okay," Ivon smiled. "I talked to my parents yesterday, and everything about the restaurant is settled. As we planned, the celebration will take place on the 26th of August. So, we have almost half a year to mentally prepare for the wedding." "Yes, I'm ready." Rosanna laughed. "I can't wait. Ivon, I love you so much. Maybe after the wedding, we could move to the capital. I'm begging you." "Rosanna, you know I can't," the groom replied dryly. "I'd have to sell the entire business. Suppose I do that, what will we do in the capital? We'll have to start everything from scratch. Can you imagine how much money it would take?" "But there, you'll truly live," the bride was offended. "Ivon, there's nowhere to even go here. There are no decent stores, no beauty salons. Not to mention good restaurants." "Rosanna, what beauty salons are you talking about?" Ivon asked with irritation in his voice. "After the wedding, we'll start planning for children immediately, so you'll have entirely different concerns." "Well, give me a couple more years to have some fun," Rosanna said playfully, dragging her beloved into the bedroom. 2 hours later, Ivon Chela snapped out of it. He needed to be at work already. He kissed Rosanna again and rushed out of her house. Ivon Chela was the son of a local magnate who once bought a factory that was among the top 5 factories in the country. The volumes of work were extensive, so Marco Chela was a mega-rich man for his region. After graduating from college, Ivon inherited a part of his father's business and started trying to achieve decent results himself. Despite his father's money, Ivon could be called an atypical millionaire. He didn't like clubs or noisy gatherings. The love of his life was the rapier. When he was 10 years old, he accidentally peeked into a fencing section. At that time, Ivon tried himself in various sports. And the moment he took the blade in his hands, he instantly fell in love. For almost 14 years now, Ivon has not missed a single training session. 5 years ago, he first announced himself at the junior championship and showed quite promising results. A brilliant future was predicted for him, but he couldn't achieve it. For almost 5 years, he had been working towards his goal, and now, in 6.5 months, right after his wedding, he would have to defend his honor again. Ivon himself understood that his potential was much greater than that of his colleagues. But he couldn't realize it. Either internal fear or a sense of anxiety always stopped him. Ivon found it difficult to describe it in words, but he felt that if he were to win, as the coach said, it would be not an external victory but an internal one. So, he simultaneously dreamed of supremacy and feared it. Ivon Chela's car pulled into the factory gates. He had already gotten used to the constant noise and dust here. "Pedro, hi," he said to the foreman. "How are you doing today?" "Hi, Ivon." "Same as always," he replied. "Marco is also at work today." "My father didn't tell me anything about it," the young owner was surprised. "Well, I'll go and find him. If you need me, just call," he added on the go. Marco Chela was in the workshop, where his son found him. The man was giving some instructions. "Dad, what's going on?" His son approached. "Did something break?" The guy was worried. "Yes, the drum furnace broke. We need to fix it urgently." "Come, I'll show you." Ivon approached the massive cylindrical container with interest. His father detailed the incident while 2 mechanics retrieved their tools. The day turned out to be very tense, and Ivon returned home at almost 9 p.m. The guy still lived with his parents. Marco was currently constructing a large 2-story house for his son and daughter-in-law, which was intended to be their wedding gift. For his beloved Rosanna, the guy bought a small house on the outskirts of the city in a new neighborhood 2 years ago. The girl wanted to live in an apartment, but she insisted that Ivon buy her a 2-story house. "Rosanna, why do you need it now?" Ivon asked her back then. "You'll still be living alone for a while. After the wedding, we'll move to the 2-story house immediately, so there's no point in this now." But the girl insisted on her own, and they even had a quarrel back then. However, since Ivon didn't give in to Rosanna, she had to accept and agree to the house that the guy bought for her at that time. One could say that Rosanna Ortega was very lucky in life. She was born in a wealthy settlement. Luck accompanied her even in this. The village was large, with over 5,000 inhabitants. The girl was born into a large family. Rosanna had 3 brothers and 2 sisters. But from an early age, she didn't get along well with them. Rosanna's father often repeated that she inherited the beauty of their entire female lineage. Teodoro was indeed handsome, but the girl's mother wasn't particularly beautiful. One could even say not at all. Only Rosanna fully inherited the features of her father, which she used throughout her life. At the age of 14, boys started paying attention to her. She always felt that only she deserved the very best. At first, her parents were shocked. They considered themselves devout people, but Rosanna didn't care about the numerous icons in the house. And when she turned 18, she left for the city. Unfortunately, even here, Rosanna couldn't restrain herself and behaved recklessly. The girl secretly took all the money from the money box where her parents kept it. She knew well that her mother and father were devout, so they wouldn't do anything to her. After she settled in the city, the girl declared that they should have been looking for her and that she would live her own life. Well, the father sighed back then. Rosanna chose her own path. We can't do anything about it. Let her live as she sees fit. At first, Nuria, Rosanna's mother, was deeply saddened by this, but later, she could let go of her daughter. For the first time, Rosanna had complete freedom and her own money. For any reasonable person, the stolen amount would have been enough for about 5 months, but the girl didn't want to deny herself all the pleasures. She immediately bought expensive clothes, cosmetics, and jewelry for herself. It never occurred to her back then that she should have been looking for a job. "Oh, how beautiful I am!" Rosanna admired herself, looking in the mirror. "Being a blonde suits me so well." The only idea in the flighty girl's mind was that she would find herself a wealthy fiancé. For some reason, Rosanna had no doubt about that. It was a warm June day when the girl in a short dress and heels rushed out onto the street. It had been just over a month since she moved to the city. Rosanna was happy. She didn't work anywhere, and she didn't have to do anything. The girl kept rejecting unwanted suitors. Joyful, Rosanna was strolling through the park. Today, she planned to visit a large store and see a cosmetologist. She sat on a bench, took out her phone, and began to scroll through it. On impulse, the girl got up and started walking when suddenly she felt like she'd bumped into someone. "Sorry, but it's not my fault," she heard a male voice. "I did my best not to disturb you, but you still bumped into me." "Me?" Rosanna raised her eyes and froze. In front of her was a young man, apparently wealthy. "Oh, excuse me," she exclaimed, lowering her gaze. "I didn't mean to. I just received some bad news, and I got lost in it." "It's okay," the stranger replied. "I hope no one was hurt." The guy smiled. "Thank God, no," the blonde answered, and her facial features became even more beautiful. The young man stared at the girl in amazement. He realized that he might be late for a meeting, but he couldn't move from the spot. "Maybe a cup of coffee in a cafe will lift your spirits a bit," the guy unexpectedly suggested. "My name is Ivon, so we're already acquainted." "I don't even know," Rosanna filled her own worth. "But only if it's for a short while." She tried not to let the stranger slip away. "I agree, I can't linger either," Ivon smiled. "I have an important meeting." The young people entered the nearest cafe. The guy cheerfully talked about his life. "I'll be honest with you, I don't really like the city," the girl declared. "I would also like to move to your city. There are more opportunities." "Well, yes. There's almost 3 times more population there," Ivon replied. "So, there are more job opportunities. So, as they say, you're welcome there." "Thank you," the blonde smiled. "But I can't do that yet. Unfortunately, I have to manage on my own. I come from a large family, and my parents can't provide for me." The young people talked for almost half an hour, and Ivon had to hurry. "Well, Rosanna, it was very nice to meet you," he said in parting. "I hope we'll see each other again. If anything, call me." He handed his new acquaintance his business card. "Ivon Chela," Rosanna read to herself. "Thank you, all right," she said aloud. "Wishing you a pleasant meeting." Ivon waved to her and rushed towards his car. He immediately called and apologized for being late. Rosanna waited for a few days, and after 3 days, she called Ivon. The guy was genuinely happy. She called. "Hello, Rosanna. How are you doing?" He said immediately. "Have you succeeded in looking for a job?" "I'm fine, thank you. But, unfortunately, I'm having trouble finding a job," the girl said sadly. "I think we should meet again. Maybe I can help you with that." Ivon replied. "I have a few acquaintances in companies." The second meeting with Rosanna was less formal, and the young people spent a few hours walking. They talked all the time, and Ivon began to suspect that he really liked the girl with such an unusual name. As for the blonde, she had her own plans for Ivon Chela. The girl could play her part quite well. It was not due to the fact that Ivon had never had serious relationships. But the girl's huge green eyes and her naive, childlike face charmed him. After the second date, Ivon decided not to waste any time. He made an official proposal to Rosanna. "Rosanna, I think we could take our relationship to a new level," Ivon said. "I really like you, and as I understand it, you like me too. So, if you're not against it, we could develop our relationship." The blonde barely held herself back from jumping on him. She understood that this was a golden opportunity for her. She never expected that happiness would find her so quickly. "Maybe we could give it a try," she replied timidly. "I hope for your honesty and nobility." "Don't worry, I'll never deceive you," Ivon said, taking the girl's hand. "You can rely on me for everything." "City," the girl declared. "I would also like to move to your place. There are more opportunities there." For almost half a year, the guy visited Rosanna in the neighboring city, immediately taking care of her in every way. However, despite his hometown being 27 kilometers away, constantly traveling to Rosanna was very inconvenient. So, Ivon suggested buying her a place in his city. He didn't want to give his beloved an apartment, and there was a weighty reason for it. He wanted to give the girl a small house. After Rosanna staged a grand scandal, which led to a temporary breakup over the house issue, they reconciled a couple of months later. Once Rosanna realized that Ivon was completely in her grasp, she gained the confidence to play her part a bit more. However, the incident with the house taught Rosanna not to show any negative emotions towards her lover, at least for some time. There was another problem. Rosanna expected a very quick outcome in her relationship with Ivon. The girl planned to marry him within a few months. However, firstly, Ivon had his diploma defense approaching. Secondly, he promised his father to take full responsibility for the factory. This required a year, so Rosanna had to wait for her beloved for almost 2 years. It must be said that once the girl moved, her life became more exciting, and Rosanna became bolder. Over time, she began to dream of the capital, but Ivon was strongly against it. It was already 11 p.m. when Ivon finished dinner. His parents were already asleep, but he started thinking over the words of his coach. Where does all this come from in me? Ivon pondered. I had a childhood that many would envy. I never got into any bad companies. But how should I deal with this internal fear? Maybe that's why I'm so afraid of heights. Again, precisely because of my fear, I never got involved with any bad guys when I was a teenager. The more the young man thought, the more he realized that he couldn't find an answer. Valeriano is right, Ivon said aloud. The rapier is close to me for some internal reason. It's not about winning as such, it's some kind of overcoming. But what or who? The further I go, the more resistance I feel. It's definitely not fatigue from fencing, I love it. It's some internal barrier that's stopping me. The closer the competition approached, the more resistance Ivon felt within himself. Not even the upcoming wedding could calm him down. It's a pity Rosanna isn't interested in any sports, Ivon sighed. Otherwise, she might understand me a little. But for Rosanna, her favorite sport was shopping and visits to beauty salons. Her body was still too young for fitness, so the girl spent her time in boutiques. It wouldn't be accurate to say that Ivon was bothered by all this, but it did slightly embarrass him. Rosanna, come on, do something. Her fiancé kept suggesting. I'll pay for any courses for you. If you want, you can even go to the capital. You have to be passionate about something in life. But I don't want to, the girl replied discontentedly. It's enough for me that I'm passionate about fashion. Do you think it's easy? Try picking the right clothing elements. You need to know the color palette and how the shape of a specific item affects the body. There's a bunch of things to know there. Excuse me, but fashion isn't always beautiful, Ivon retorted. Sometimes you look at all this horror that's being advertised. After all, much of it simply can't be worn. It's either ugly or completely impractical. Well, to follow trends, you have to endure it, sighed the girl. Do you think it's easy to walk in high heels? Yes, I really don't understand why women do it at all. The young man argued. It's like hanging weights on your legs and walking like that. It's a direct path to varicose veins and joint diseases. As a representative of the male gender, I can confidently say that you don't need to make such sacrifices for me. Look how harmonious low-heeled sandals are. We can even compare. Ivon, you don't understand anything about women's fashion, Rosanna replied. When a woman puts on heels, she becomes not only taller but also slimmer. Oh, God. Maybe it's better to work on reducing weight instead of masking it. The guy didn't give up. I mean, I understand that a short, tight skirt also, so to speak, makes one slimmer. Not only that, it also highlights slender legs, the girl replied. Look, I'm in a tight skirt. Is it beautiful? Sorry, but that looks more like anorexia. I just don't understand such sacrifices, the groom exclaimed, grabbing his head. Well, I lost 5 kilograms on a diet, so the skirt makes me look much slimmer, Rosanna said in the mirror. Rosanna, why? You weighed 55 kilograms. For your height, that's even below the norm. So, do you weigh 50 now? 49 and a half, the girl boasted. So, you can congratulate me. Congratulate? For what? For foolishness? The young man replied in shock. I understand when a woman weighs 120 kilograms. Even in that case, a woman can look great. I've seen such full-figured ladies who were real beauties. But why do you need all this? The closer the wedding approached, the more Ivon realized that there wasn't much in common between him and Rosanna. Yes, everything was different with Toya, the guy thought, feeling a strong pain. It was a topic that the young man had forbidden himself to think about. But after Rosanna appeared in his life, such thoughts constantly invaded his mind. What nonsense is this? Ivon sternly told himself. Soon I'll marry Rosanna, we'll become a family and then have children. So, everything will be fine. Preparation for the championship was in full swing. Valeriano tried to oversee Ivon from all sides. Ivon, focus, Valeriano shouted. Add more energy to your attacks. Like this. Good, and now make a series. Don't stop, Ivon. No, wait. Valeriano ran up to the students and snatched the rapier from Ivon's hands. Here are the strikes, don't hesitate. The coach showed him. Okay, Ivon, close your eyes, he ordered. Salvador, attack him. Ivon, trust your intuition completely. Yes, like that, parry. And now, try to attack yourself, Valeriano directed the fight. Ivon, trust yourself. Salvador has everything under control. Now that you don't see him, strike one after another. Yes, well done. The fight stopped, and Ivon, taking off his mask, approached the coach. Valeriano looked satisfied. Ivon, when you don't see your opponent, you develop a sense for it. We should include this exercise more often in your training. You are experienced fencers, so there's not much chance that you'll hurt each other. Besides, only one of you will have closed eyes. After the training, Ivon thought seriously. The guy clearly felt that when he couldn't see his opponent, it was easier for him to attack. This, of course, was completely illogical, but nevertheless. Meanwhile, things were progressing at the factory, but Ivon began to feel that it wasn't his calling. Dad, Marco's son said at some point, I feel like the factory is not for me. Ivon, what are you saying? His father looked at him in amazement. You've been dreaming of heading it for so many years. What happened to you? I don't know. Lately, I just feel like I don't want to deal with cement, the son replied. But this is not serious, the man objected. The factory is our life. You won't earn so much money in any other business. Yeah, but I don't need much. What am I going to do with it? The guy asked dryly. You've earned enough that it will last for 3 generations. All right, Marco said coldly. Get rid of this nonsense in your head. You will soon be a family man, you will have children. How will you provide for your wife and them? Well, with my abilities, I can do anything, the son didn't give up. But his father wasn't any longer listening. He waved his hand to stop Ivon from continuing the conversation. That evening, the guy wanted to talk to Rosanna about it. He really needed someone's support. Ivon, what are you saying? The bride looked at him in horror. But what will we live on? Rosanna, I can start another business with that money, the guy tried to convince her. Well, it's not for me. Can't you understand me? No. The girl replied sharply. You, first of all, should think about the family. But am I not thinking about it? The young man was surprised. I'm not renouncing my obligation. Ivon, but you said yourself that I wouldn't work anywhere. Rosanna got scared. Yes, I'm not forcing you. He couldn't get through to his bride. I just want to do something else. The factory is not for me, I'm sure of that. The conversation that evening didn't go well, and Ivon left for home early. He rarely spent the night at the girl's place, and she didn't insist on it much. What an idiot! Rosanna exclaimed as he left. As if we needed him to quit the factory. And then what? Will we be left with nothing? Should we say goodbye to summer vacations abroad, boutiques, and beauty salons? Damn you! She cursed and dialed someone's number. Hello, my sweetie. Rosanna purred. What's up? Tonight, I'm yours. As soon as Rosanna and Ivon entered into a serious relationship, the girl quickly realized that the guy's temperament didn't quite suit her. The young man was probably more reserved. He didn't indulge in wild passions in bed and didn't experience ecstatic sensations. Very soon, the girl realized she wanted something else. Well, what am I going to do about it? She asked herself. Give my youth to a man who can't satisfy me even once a week. And how am I going to live with him? Of course, I'm ready to do anything for his money, but why should I suffer? Rosanna took advantage of the fact that Ivon trusted her completely, and after a year of their relationship, she began to cautiously explore the ground for romantic affairs. And since the girl was indeed attractive, she soon found the lover she had dreamed of. But there was one but. Arturo wasn't wealthy. Moreover, as it turned out, Rosanna had to support him. A taxi stopped in front of Ivon's fiancé's house, and a handsome guy quickly went out of it. Rosanna, my love. He rushed to his beloved. God, how I missed you. He lifted her in his arms and carried her to the bedroom. An hour later, they were sitting in the kitchen, and Arturo was enjoying the dinner prepared by the girl. Rosanna, thank you. It's so delicious. He exclaimed. I can't understand why you're so sad. Didn't you like it? I did, but this jerk wants to leave the factory. The girl snorted. You see, it's not his passion. He wants to do something else in life. What an idiot, the guest agreed. And what will happen now? How are we going to live? I don't know, Rosanna sighed. Of course, I told him no, let him just try. I'll stand my ground. Well, our carefree life has come to an end, Arturo gloomily put his spoon into the soup. You know, you have only one way out. After the wedding, you'll need to transfer all the property to yourself. Well, this house will still be yours, I'll live in it for now. Ask him to transfer the 2-story house to you as well. Demand a car from him after the wedding, let him register it in your name too. What else? Some country house. Buy various valuables with his money so that you can take them with you later. Arturo, do you think all this is so easy? The blonde objected. It's like walking on a razor's edge. Everything needs to be done in such a way that he doesn't suspect anything. Rosanna, I love you, you know that, the guest kissed the girl. I'm ready to do anything for you. Look, I even left Eleonora forever, though she still calls me. Tell your Eleonora that I'll claw her eyes out, Rosanna got angry. Just dare to call her again. I don't call her. You can check, if you want, the guy got offended. I'm not to blame that I'm so good in bed that all the girls go crazy over me. Well, in that, I agree with them, the blonde purred. But you're mine. Do you hear me? If I find out you have someone else, I'll kill you. She threatened Arturo with her fist. The guy quickly got up from his chair, picked up Rosanna in his arms, and again carried her to the bedroom. Ivon returned home in a bad mood. No one wanted to understand him, neither his father nor his beloved woman. I feel like I'm completely alone, he exclaimed, grabbing his head. They don't understand me at all, he thought. Why do we have to do what others want, not what we want? His mind exploded with questions. It's not that Marco didn't love his son. He probably didn't understand him. The man wanted to provide security for both himself and Ivon. But he didn't realize one thing: in such a rapidly changing world resembling chaos, it was impossible to achieve this. It was possible to create a temporary illusion that everything was under control, but from time to time, something still happened. Something that disrupted the established sense of security. There was a month left before the wedding, and there was a hustle and bustle in Ivon Chela's house. On the one hand, everything was prepared for the celebration. They bought the wedding dress and suit. But in the air, there was a feeling that something else hadn't been done yet. Ivon, his mother said one day, "You probably should invite Rosanna for dinner. It's been a while since she visited us, and before the wedding, we should discuss everything once again." "Okay, Mom, how about Friday?" "I won't have training that day," the son suggested. Ivon was so engrossed in his affairs that he completely forgot that he had agreed with his parents to bring Rosanna for dinner. "Rosanna, hi." He called his fiancée. "I'm coming for you. I forgot to tell you that we're having dinner at our place tonight. Get ready quickly." "You're coming to my place?" the girl asked in horror. "Ivon, but I'm not at home now, sorry." For a romantic meeting with Arturo, the girl booked a room in a hotel, and they were currently indulging in the passion of their love. "And where are you?" "I'll come to you now and pick you up," Ivon suggested. "Come on, tell me." "Ivon," the girl couldn't come up with anything on the spot. "You know, I'm at a friend's place. Her boyfriend dumped her, so she's in trouble. Let me come to you in about 40 minutes. She hates all the guys now, including you. So, it's better not to show up at her place." "Darn it. Why does all this happen now?" the guy cursed. "Well, okay. We'll wait for you. I'll let my parents know." "Oh God!" Rosanna exclaimed when the groom hung up. "Wow. I stressed a bit. Okay, Arturo, I need to run. Let's go. Otherwise, I still need to change. I can't go to them in this dress or with this wide belt." She adjusted either the dress or the wide belt. This was the first time she was almost caught. Everything was at stake, and she couldn't afford to lose it. Nevertheless, Rosanna arrived at Ivon's parents' house only an hour and a half later. I wanted to leave, but when she told me she was going to jump out of the window, the girl fabricated a story on the go. I couldn't leave her in such a state. Late in the evening, Ivon took his fiancée home. He undressed and passionately started kissing Rosanna. "Ivon," the girl tried to pull away from him. "Let's leave it for another day. I got too nervous. I have a headache." "Okay," the guy replied displeasedly. He embraced his beloved again and left the house. "Oh God. I won't let him touch me again." The bride was angry. "I can't stand him. After Arturo, he's just an insensitive monster." Rosanna also felt that it wouldn't be easy for her. Her disdain for Ivon grew every day, and the girl didn't know how to control it. "The main thing is to live with him for about 2 years to take as much money as possible," the blonde reassured herself, "and then accuse him of infidelity and file for divorce. Besides, I told him many times I would never forgive infidelity. So, he won't be able to prove the opposite. For myself and Arturo, I'll endure it." But everything wasn't that simple. Ivon was in a very complex state. He needed support, and he couldn't get it from Rosanna. The guy started to think more and more about whether he really needed this wedding. "Oh God, I just feel so clearly that neither the factory nor Rosanna is what I really want," he was thinking. "What should I do?" Ivon tried to be honest with himself about how he felt towards his beloved. "Do I love Rosanna? I love her, that's for sure," he tried not to lie. "But there's something missing in her, and I don't understand what. Does she love me?" A question arose in his mind. "I don't know," he said aloud. "I really don't know how women love. Well, except maybe Toya. I somehow don't doubt that she was sincere." A few days later, Ivon couldn't stand it and talked to Rosanna. He was very nervous. "Rosanna, tell me honestly, do you love me?" He looked her straight in the eyes. The girl didn't even understand at first what he was asking. Then she quickly came to her senses. Ivon, of course. She hugged him. I love you very much. We have just a few days left until our wedding. I'm going crazy, waiting for the time to pass. I love you too, Rosanna, the groom kissed her. We'll be together all the time soon. After this conversation, the girl began to feel some internal unease. Oh damn. She cursed. Did he suspect something? How do I find out about this? I need to stop meeting Arturo for now. Arturo, Rosanna dialed the familiar number. Don't come to my place for now. Rosanna, what? I can't live without you. The lover began to protest. Do you want to get rid of me? No, the girl quickly replied. I think that idiot suspects something. Imagine, today he asked if I love him. And what's so suspicious about that? The guy didn't understand. I constantly ask you the same thing. His face. You should have seen how he asked that, Rosanna sighed. We can't get caught right before the wedding. Rosanna, stop it, he didn't suspect anything, Arturo tried to persuade the girl. We have a few weeks left, and I'll lose you. Maybe forever. Are you an idiot? The blonde got angry. We'll never part, don't even think about it. Arturo Gonzalez was born into an ordinary family. His most distinctive feature was laziness, and it applied to everything. He didn't aspire to anything and never wanted to study, and when he turned 18, his father gave him an ultimatum. Either go to work or live with us, or, the man calmly said. After many years, they had seen enough of their selfish son, so it was a settled matter for them. And Arturo chose his way of living. At that time, he was already successfully involved in a romance with a 30-year-old woman who was delighted with his abilities. So she took him in. That's how Arturo's career as a gold digger began. Frankly, it didn't bother him at all. For his, let's say, work, the guy got everything, a roof over his head, good food, and decent clothes. That's how one should live. He said to himself. These fools not only work every day but also provide for their wives. Who said that the weaker sex should be women? I'm doing just fine. Let them talk about what they want. The main thing is that I've arranged my life well. After Marta, there was Marina, then Valeriana, and then Irma. Arturo had a long list, but he didn't intend to stop with women in their 30s and 40s. He always had a younger alternative on the side. Of course, teenagers, as he called 18 and 20-year-olds, irritated him with their jealousy. But over time, Arturo learned to deal with it. The guy was almost 28, and before meeting Rosanna, his longest and most dizzying romance had ended. A wealthy, 55-year-old widow had been in a relationship with him for 4 years. Marietta gave Arturo an expensive car. Officially, the widow didn't want to formalize any relationship with her young lover. She was afraid people would laugh at her. But she treated Arturo at the highest level, and maybe it would have continued if he hadn't discovered one day that his place had already been taken. The new chosen one for Marietta was 23, and the woman plunged into new relationships with new passion. However, to give credit, Arturo didn't lose the car or the expensive branded items neither. He even kept a 10-carat diamond ring. He could have sold all of it and bought some apartments, but Arturo got used to luxury. So, he rented another place for himself and continued hunting for a new victim. For emotions, he had 21-year-old Laura at that time. The girl followed him everywhere, she even slashed her wrists because of Arturo. But the guy had long lost sensitivity to such things. For him, any woman was just a thing. However, when Arturo met the self-assured and proud Rosanna, and she rejected him from the very first moment, he seriously thought, wow. Did she just reject me? He couldn't believe it when the girl told him to go to hell. From that day on, Arturo became obsessed with her, and it took him almost 3 months for Rosanna to finally surrender to him. You know, Rosanna, we are very similar, he once told her. Both you and I can control ourselves when we need to. Arturo understood that he had complete protection. None of his age-appropriate ladies could say a word about Rosanna. Women over 40 rarely admitted it, and the guy knew it well. "Arturo, a woman is watching us," Rosanna said when she and Arturo were sitting in a cafe. "Does she know you?" "Where?" He turned around and cast a disapproving look at the stranger. "No, I see her for the first time." But a few minutes later, the woman stood up from her table, quickly walked towards the young couple, and before they could look up, hot coffee dripped from Arturo's sweater. "Oh, sorry," the woman immediately said. "I'm so clumsy." She grabbed a napkin and started wiping Arturo off. "Hey, what are you doing to my boyfriend?" Rosanna yelled in anger. "First, you spill on him, and now you're touching him? Clearly, you don't have a man. You have no right to meddle with someone else's man. He's mine. Got it?" The girl started a real scandal. "Damn Marina." Arturo cursed himself. "Damn you." He looked at the woman with a hateful gaze. But the stranger was smiling broadly. It was clear that everything that was happening pleased her greatly. "You know, even if you were the only man in the world, I still wouldn't have chosen him," the woman proudly declared. "Besides, he looks like a future impotent to me. I'm telling you this as a doctor. By the age of 35 or 40, your beloved will have problems." "What nonsense are you talking?" Arturo snapped. This topic was painful for him. "I will never be impotent." "We'll see," the stranger laughed, looked at him once again, and, humming a song, left the cafe. "Who is this?" Rosanna asked in shock. "I feel like she knows you." "Arturo, tell me," she commanded. "I saw her for the first time. She's just a crazy woman." The guy was outraged. "Did you hear what she said? I'm going to be impotent." "Well, firstly, not now, but in the future," the girl replied. "And secondly, maybe she is really a doctor. Probably, there are some indirect signs by which she can determine that." "Well, thanks for reassuring me," Arturo said, annoyed. "Idiot. She had no right to say that. Stupid, brainless woman." He continued to curse the stranger. There were no more incidents with Arturo's ex-lovers, so Rosanna didn't know that her beloved was an Alphonse. She always thought that he was in a very difficult situation, and she was helping him. In reality, she just supported him. And when the girl told him that they shouldn't see each other for some time, Arturo was genuinely scared. He didn't want to lose Rosanna. He felt much better with her than with divorced women, widows, and older ladies. So, although Rosanna asked him not to come, afraid of losing control over her, Arturo couldn't resist and came to her just before the wedding, which later became a fatal mistake for them. And here's what happened. 3 days before the wedding, Rosanna asked her fiancé not to come. The girl received a large sum of money from him and wanted to spend the remaining days before the celebration shopping. But a day before the wedding, as soon as she entered her house, she saw a taxi car, and Arturo got out of it. "Are you out of your mind?" Rosanna asked. "I asked you not to come for now." The girl scolded him. "Rosanna, I'll go crazy without you." The guy hugged his beloved. "We'll be quick. Come on, come here," he said, carrying her to the bedroom. After satisfying his passion, Arturo collapsed on the bed. The guy seemed to be charged with energy. "Rosanna, I need money." He looked at the girl with eyes full of tears. "The landlord has become outrageous, demanding that I pay him 3 months in advance. And I haven't even finished paying off the loan, you know." "Arturo, don't worry, I'll give you some now." "My husband gave me a lot of money before the wedding," the girl replied. "Then maybe you have enough for medicine too?" Arturo cautiously said. "You know, I couldn't stand it and went to the doctor. I really need serious treatment now, or you know what will happen to me," he sighed. "Don't worry, my love," Rosanna hugged him. "Tomorrow, I'll become Ivon's wife, and then you'll have money constantly. You'll live here." I'll tell that idiot that I'm renting the place to you. He'll believe me. In a few months, we'll buy you a car and then an apartment. I'm so scared, tears streamed down his cheeks. I feel like as soon as you get married, I'll lose you forever. Rosanna, I love you. Arturo, my love, I won't let you go. The girl kissed her beloved. On the contrary, in 2 years, we'll be together. I'll return to you, not empty-handed, just wait a little. What matters to me now is getting married, and then we'll figure everything out. Please don't leave me, the guy continued to play his part. I'll die without you. The train slowly started moving, the station flickered outside the window, and landscapes passed one after another. I haven't been home for almost 5 years, the girl sighed. Maybe I shouldn't have gone on vacation there? The passenger immersed herself in thought. She hadn't thought about all the painful things connected with her hometown for many years. Toya sighed. Perhaps the girl wouldn't have gone home. Her parents had been visiting her in the capital for many years. But her younger brother lived here, and Toya decided to finally deal with her traumas. The girl took out a book, but her whole body was trembling so much that she couldn't even read. I wonder if he's there? She thought. Most likely, because his father will never leave his factory. And he, as long as I remember, wanted to take over it after college. The girl looked out the window again, and tears streamed down her cheeks. Toya felt the pain that had been hiding for 5 years. Ivon, Toya. She heard the cheerful voices of classmates. What, are you guys late today? They called them by 2 names because they were inseparable. Pancho Herrero gave them that nickname because everyone had stopped perceiving the young people separately. The guy and the girl quickly ran into the classroom and sat at their favorite table. Toya, I think I forgot my notebook at home today, the guy said, reaching into his backpack. Oh, damn. He swore. Here, the girl took a double sheet from her notebook. I'll write the lecture for you later, when I'm waiting for you after practice. The student day dragged on for a very long time until the last bell finally rang. Everyone sighed and quickly ran out into the street. Well, where are we going? Pancho looked at everyone. How about the park? I suggest today we remember our childhood and go on the carousel. Pancho, come on, stop it. The girls protested. What carousels? Let's go to the fountain instead and buy some pastries there, otherwise, we're starving. Guys, we're really sorry, but we need to run. Ivon took Toya's hand. I have practice in half an hour. Well, Pancho said with annoyance in his voice. You're always like this. You don't go anywhere with us. Like, we're not group mates at all. Goodbye. Ivon rushed ahead. See you tomorrow. Pancho, I promise we'll hang out after the exams. Yeah. Like last year? The guy sighed. You could have postponed your trip to the capital then. But his friends didn't hear him. They were running full sail to the sports school. Toya knew well that Ivon hated being late, especially for his fencing practice. Ivon and Toya were friends from the very first year. It couldn't be called love. But at the end of the second year of study, they became such good friends that they spent all their free time together. But there was one but. Ivon perceived Toya in a strange way. She was always a real friend for him. With her, he could talk about everything. But he was afraid that it might turn into something serious. You know, Toya, I'm so afraid of losing you, Ivon once told her. You mean a lot to me. Why should we break up? The girl asked in surprise. Do you want to end our friendship? No, he quickly replied. But I'm afraid that if it turns into something serious, I won't be able to continue, he said, looking at her. What do you mean? The friend didn't quite understand. Don't you want us to become a couple? I mean to have a physical connection. Yes, the guy sighed. You're my best friend, but honestly, I don't want more. For Toya, it was a real blow. The girl never hinted at her feelings, but she had loved Ivon for a long time. She faced a very difficult choice: to confess her feelings to him and just break up with him, or to simply love him while forever remaining just a friend for him. For several weeks, Toya suffered, but she still realized that her love was stronger, and she left everything as it was. Ivon was always honest. The guy always told Toya everything right away. He never hid anything from her, and the girl highly appreciated these qualities in him. "Toya, I have some kind of fear inside me," he once confessed to her. "I'm simultaneously afraid of everything and nothing. I can't explain it to you, but it's very difficult for me to live with it." "Okay," the girl replied calmly. "Let's reason together. Let's start with specifics. First, identify those things you can name. What are you afraid of?" "I'll try," the guy sighed. "First of all, I'm scared of heights. Even if I look out the window of an apartment on the 3rd floor, I have a panic attack. I became insanely scared. Next, I'm afraid of alcohol. I feel like if I hang out with guys, I'll get drunk. I have a fear of big dogs. I'm terribly afraid of becoming homeless and living on the street. I feel dislike and anxiety when people laugh at me. What else? I have a panicky fear of relationships. Besides you, I have no real friends but you." "Well, I can confidently tell you that most people experience such fears," the girl smiled. "How would you describe your fear if you didn't categorize it?" "Oh, I don't know," Ivon fell silent. "Maybe I can describe it with a specific situation." The guy pondered. "It's like I'm in a large room. There's a dim light bulb hanging from above, and its shadow falls on the floor and walls. I'm alone, and suddenly the walls start closing in, as if they want to crush me. Oh God, even just imagining it, I start to panic," he barely uttered. Toya embraced Ivon and tried to calm him down. The girl understood that it was a real struggle for him. Half an hour later, Ivon came to his senses again. After this incident, Toya felt even more how much Ivon needed her, even if only as a friend. But time passed, and it became increasingly difficult for the girl to hide her feelings. She knew for sure that she needed only Ivon Chela. He was always there for her, but there was always a distance between them. The 3rd year of study was coming to an end. The exams were in full swing. Young people were heading home from another exam. In 2 days, they would take the last exam. "Ivon, let's go to my place," Toya suggested. "Let's eat something and discuss the last exam." Ivon and Toya often visited each other's homes. There was never a problem with that, and the guy agreed. "Pancho, I'm so tired of all this already," he sighed. "The 3rd year is already ending, but there's no end in sight to all this. Imagine if we were only in our 1st year," the girl laughed. "The glass is half full, not empty." "You're such an optimist," Ivon Chela replied sadly. "Although, on the other hand, I can't even imagine what will happen when we finish college." "Well, with you, everything is clear," Pancho replied. "You'll take over your father's factory, and I will probably leave this place." "Where will you go?" Ivon said in fear. "Toya, are you planning to move?" "What about me?" He looked at her with pleading eyes. "Well, just because I moved to another city, we won't stop being friends, will we?" Pancho refuted his fears. "But what if you get married and have a family?" he said in shock. "I'll lose you." "But you'll get married someday too, Ivon," the girl said with a gentle voice. "And you'll have a family and children too." "I don't want to," he said, lowering his eyes. "You're everything I have," Ivon whispered. The girl began to stroke his face, and unexpectedly, Ivon kissed Toya. He started to passionately embrace the girl, and for the first time in their friendship, something serious happened between them. After Ivon left, Toya was simply over the moon. She loved him with all her heart and was ready to do anything for him. But her happiness didn't last long. Toya was heading to the university for the final exam. Ivon didn't answer her phone, and she thought he would be waiting for her by the entrance, but he wasn't there. Ivon arrived very late for the exam, but Toya waited for him. Ivon, are you feeling unwell? She calmly asked him after the exam. Toya, everything's fine, he replied dryly. Can we talk? The guy added. Her friend looked at him in confusion. The girl had a premonition of something bad. Toya, you're my best friend, and I want to apologize to you. Ivon tried not to look into the girl's eyes. We shouldn't have done that. Ivon, I love you, the girl couldn't hold back. Do you understand? And she burst into tears. I can't, he said. I don't love you, I can't love my friend, please forgive me, he said, running away. Toya understood that she wouldn't be able to study with Ivon at the same university anymore. She rushed home and had a serious talk with her parents in the evening. During the summer, I'll work for now, she tried to convince her parents. And during the semester, I'll have evening part-time jobs. Besides, I'll transfer without losing a year of studying. Toya's father and mother were strongly against their daughters moving to the capital. But each of them knew that Ivon was the meaning of her whole life. Toya collected her documents and went to enroll in the capital. She blocked her friend's number, but he didn't call her during all that time. He missed Toya terribly, but his internal fear paralyzed him so much that Ivon couldn't even move. And what a blow it was for him when, at the beginning of the 4th year in September, he got to know that Toya had left. The girl turned away from the window. She was tired of watching houses, trees, and cars flash by. Maybe I'll make the bed and lie down, Toya thought to herself. What's the point of sitting and grieving over the past? But her thoughts wouldn't let her go, and she immersed herself in memories again. The most challenging period for Toya was the first 3 months after the move. She constantly stopped herself from calling Ivon and telling him everything. But then Toya would come to her senses and honestly admit that her friend had never lied to her. He had told her from the very beginning that he didn't want any serious relationships between them. What else could he have told me, the girl thought. Toya, I'm sorry, but I'm scared of having relationships. What did I want from him? Just for him to admit to me that he's a coward? But he never hid it, he always told me everything honestly. The problem is that I loved him. For almost 5 years, Toya had been running away from herself. She even tried to date other guys, but everything felt wrong to her. She always saw Ivon's face in front of her. She quickly gave up on that. Well, I'll be alone then, Toya told herself. I won't make myself do it, let it be as it will be. After graduating from college, Toya joined a large company. Her salary was modest in the first year, but then it started to rise. She earned well and took out a loan for an apartment. 3 years later, her younger brother moved in with her. Julio lived with his sister for about a year and then rented his own place. So, from the outside, one could say that the girl's life was quite settled. Toya loved trains like the one she was on. She boarded in the evening and arrived at her destination by morning. Oh, how long it's been since I've been here, the girl thought, stepping onto the platform. Well, hello, dear city. In the distance, Toya's father appeared. They were a little late, and he waved to his daughter. Hi, Toya. Her father joyfully hugged her. Your mother and I literally overslept. A few minutes later, her mother rushed up to her. She practically threw herself at the girl. Mama, come on, what are you doing? Her daughter calmed her. I finally managed to come visit you, but I'm not dead. Toya's father loaded her suitcase into the trunk, and they drove home. The house was filled with the aroma of Toya's favorite cabbage pies, homemade cutlets, and salad. Mom, I'll eat everything now. The daughter laughed. Did you decide to fatten me up? Yes, is there anything decent in your capital besides fast food? Fina Duran protested. Just look at yourself. You're so skinny. Mom, I'm not a skeleton. The girl laughed. Dad, tell her. Okay, stop counting kilograms here. I'm as hungry as a wolf. Roberto Duran retorted. Your mother didn't even give me one cutlet. So, I came to meet you hungry. Nothing will happen to you, his wife replied, displeased. Just look at your stomach. It can fit triplets in there. Well, I'm not to blame that it's growing. The man hugged Fina. Besides, someone cooks very deliciously. Toya was watching her parents with pleasure. After many years of married life, they had become, as they say, perfectly attuned. Their daughter couldn't remember when they had scandals or arguments. Well, maybe sometimes one of them would get offended and not speak for 3 days, which was the worst that ever happened. Toya, her father said after a hearty breakfast, we don't want to hide anything from you, but there are rumors that Ivon is getting married soon. Dad, I have nothing to say about that, the girl sighed. I can only wish him happiness. Certainly, deep down, the girl wanted to meet her ex-boyfriend. Perhaps she still hoped for something, but nevertheless, the news caused her pain, although Toya didn't show it. The girl didn't want to stay at home, so she tidied up everything in the kitchen, and since it was Saturday, Toya decided to go for a walk. The bus stopped, and Toya got off near a large shopping center. Over the past 5 years, the city had changed a lot. A new district was built, and in the old town, new skyscrapers and huge stores had emerged. Toya walked through the hypermarket without much interest, her gaze pausing on something from time to time. Yes, everything has changed so much here, Toya whispered. The only thing is, there's not as much hustle and bustle as in the capital. Toya strolled through the store for a bit and headed towards the exit. Her mother told her not to buy anything for now, so she decided to leave the shopping for later. There were cafes near the shopping center, and Toya wanted to have a cup of coffee. It always calmed her down. Thoughts of Ivon kept intruding into her mind, but she didn't want to think about him. However, as Toya was sitting at a table and looking out the window, she unexpectedly saw a familiar figure. The girl paled. She clearly saw Ivon with some unfamiliar girl. They stopped right by her window and talked for a long time. The blonde girl seemed upset and pouted, and when the guy tried to hug her, she recoiled and walked away. They both got into a car and drove off. So, that's his future wife, Toya realized. Oh God, why did you show me all this? I didn't want to know it. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Let him go to hell, she cursed herself. Let him be happy with his blonde. She returned home without a mood. She even thought about leaving for the capital on the same day. No, Toya sternly told herself. Why should I run away from him? I have the right to be here. Besides, there's nothing between us anymore, and it's been a long time. The only time we were together doesn't impose any obligations on us. Toya took some time to compose herself, feeling a bit lighter. She didn't want to visit anyone or meet her old friends. She wanted to be alone. So, as she managed all the housework, she would either visit neighboring towns or stroll around her own city. Probably after about 5 days, Toya was walking around the city. She didn't want to think about anything. She entered a large store and wandered aimlessly through it. There were a few customers, and Toya didn't pay any attention to them. Well, I told you, exactly the same, only blue. She heard a dissatisfied voice. By inertia, Toya turned around and saw the familiar blonde. The girl was surprised. The customer was expressing dissatisfaction with the service. Do you even know who I am? She shouted throughout the store. I'm practically Ivon Chela's wife. I guess I don't need to explain who he is to you. So, it would be better if you were more careful with your words. Oh my God, what? Toya thought. Is Ivon going to marry her? In shock, the girl whispered. She looks like a mercenary girl. Oh God. Toya was about to leave the store when the blonde's phone rang. She immediately answered the call. Yes, darling, hello. The girl announced to the entire hall. I've almost finished my business, wait for me. I'll come in a new dress, I promise you'll like it. This all sounds strange, Toya thought. When I first saw her, she had pouted lips and didn't want to talk to Ivon. And now she's revealing spicy details about her life. It's all nonsense. But the surprises didn't end there. Toya left the store. This whole story was unpleasant for her. However, her phone also rang. Standing on the street, Toya answered her mother's call. Suddenly, a taxi pulled up near the store, and a young man jumped out of it. Toya looked at him in confusion. He didn't enter the store, and it was evident that the stranger was waiting for someone. The taxi didn't leave either. The blonde girl came out of the store and got into the taxi. The stranger followed her into the back seat, and the guy began kissing the girl. Toya opened her mouth in shock. "Mom, I'll call you back in 5 minutes," the daughter quickly said and hung up the phone. Toya, like a statue, was watching how passionate they were in the back seat. The girl just couldn't believe her eyes. "Maybe I'm making things up?" she finally said. "This just can't be." She was screaming in the store that she would soon be Ivon's wife. Who is this? Her lover? Toya couldn't come to her senses for a long time, but something made her take a taxi. She asked the driver to follow the car the blonde got into. "I'll pay for everything, both the waiting time and the ride," she told the taxi driver when she saw his dissatisfied face. The first taxi stopped near a small house. First, the blonde girl got out of the car and went inside, then the car drove away, and the guy got out. He also headed there. Toya memorized the house number. She decided to wait and see how it all ended. Since the blonde didn't know her, there was no need for Toya to hide. She paid for the taxi and sat on a bench near the neighboring house. Probably after an hour or two, a taxi pulled up to the house again, and the guy jumped into it. Toya was about to leave, but something stopped her. The girl decided to wait a little longer, and to her great surprise, an hour later, the car she had already seen approached the house. Toya sharply stood up and walked in the opposite direction, looking back from time to time. Ivon got out of the car. The blonde girl saw him off, kissed him goodbye, and went into the house. Oh my God, she's cheating on him, Toya thought. But how can this be? Can't he see anything at all? Is he such a fool? The girl sat at a distance, near a large bush. She saw Ivon coming out of the house. The blonde girl bid him farewell with a kiss and entered the house. What a twist! Toya couldn't come to her senses. Is everything I saw today really true? Toya returned home. She was pale, with so many feelings and thoughts swirling within her. Poor Ivon, she thought. She doesn't love him. She doesn't need him. So, why is she with him? Surely, this girl only wants his money, and if he marries her, she'll just play with him. She already has a lover. But what does all this have to do with me? The opposite thought pierced her mind. This is his life, his choice. I offered him my love, and I would have loved him for the rest of my life, but he rejected me. Now let him pay for it. If a person doesn't want to learn from love, then they learn from pain. Toya tried to calm down, but it was not working for her. She felt the need to make a decision. However, she didn't know what to do with all of this. Maybe I should talk to him, she pondered. And he'll say to me, "Why are you interfering?" Then how can I help him? And should I even do that, considering we are no longer friends? For several days, Toya felt out of sorts, and she didn't even go outside. Her parents were working all day long. She arrived in her hometown on August 15th, and so much has happened since then. Finally, after lunch, Toya decided to take a walk around the city. But even on this day, a surprise awaited her. In the park, she ran into her former classmate, Pancho. "Toya, is that you?" The guy hugged her. "It's been so many years. You disappeared from the college so unexpectedly, we were all shocked." "Hello, Pancho. I'm glad to see you too," Toya rejoiced. "Honestly, I had serious problems, so I had to leave urgently. I finished college in the capital and decided to stay there. I'm very happy for you." He grinned broadly. "Have you seen Ivon? He's getting married on August 26th, that's tomorrow." "No, Ever since I left for the capital, we stopped communicating, the girl replied. We've all grown up, and everyone has their own lives. The young people talked a little more and bid farewell to each other. Toya felt very uneasy, and the events unfolded like a dream. Toya took a taxi and went to the house of her new acquaintance. She paid the driver and got out. Well, what am I going to do? She asked herself discontentedly. I definitely won't talk to her. Toya sat on a familiar bench, decided to wait a bit, and then went home. But half an hour later, a car stopped near the house she had been watching, and the same guy got out of it. Toya was afraid to move. She quickly took out her phone. Pancho gave her Ivon's phone number just in case. The former girlfriend hesitated a bit and started writing something. The girl was very nervous. She cried, and her hands trembled, so she kept erasing words and rewriting them. He shouldn't recognize me, she whispered. I don't want us to meet. Perhaps for a few minutes, Toya tried to write Ivon a message. Finally, she succeeded. I'll sign it anonymously, she said with pale lips. Maybe you'll believe it and come here. The girl pressed the send button on the text message and froze in shock. Her heart pounded wildly, and she couldn't even stand up from the bench. If you don't want to make the biggest mistake of your life, come to your fiancé's house. She is not who she pretends to be. Hurry up to catch her with her lover. Anonymous, Ivon read aloud. What the hell? He cursed. Is it a prank or something? He threw the phone on the office desk. The wedding is tomorrow. But Ivon faced unexpected circumstances at the factory, and he was late. He really wanted to go home to mentally prepare for the upcoming event. What idiot wrote this? Ivon couldn't calm down. Screw it. He cursed. However, something stirred inside him, a strong inner impulse that made him feel the need to act. He paced back and forth for about 10 minutes, finally grabbed his belongings, and ran to his car. He was very agitated. All right, I need to pull myself together, he ordered himself, wiping the sweat from his face. I need to act very carefully. Constantly pressing on the gas pedal, he didn't want to believe what was written in the text message. But doubts were rising from the depths of his soul. If this is true, everything between Rosanna and me will be over, he said decisively. I won't forgive it. Half an hour later, Ivon left his car at the beginning of the street and walked to his fiancée's house. Carefully, he opened the gate and entered the house. The bedroom was on the side of a small garden, so nobody noticed him. Ivon clearly heard voices. His legs gave way when loud male laughter echoed throughout the house. Oh God, is this all true? He thought. Is this Rosanna's lover? Ivon wanted to rush into the bedroom immediately, but something stopped him. He approached and listened. Since the door was slightly ajar, he could distinctly hear the conversation. You are my favorite, Rosanna said with tenderness. I will never leave you. I'm so lucky to have you. So, you don't have to worry about money. After the wedding, we'll live well. Fooling this idiot is easy, so he'll keep giving us money. And then he'll cheat on me, and I'll leave him. She laughed. Well, I didn't expect to see anything different. The door opened, and Ivon entered the bedroom. I hate to disappoint you, but you won't succeed. Ivon? Rosanna exclaimed, covering herself with a blanket. How did you get here? Just came to see what my future wife is up to. The guy smiled and shouted, both of you, get out of my house. Oh, really? Rosanna jumped. This is my house, so you should get out of here. All right, I'm even willing to give it to you, just never to see you again in my life. He replied and left. Scumbags. He clenched his fists. I hate you. He drove onto the highway and spent a few hours driving to calm down a bit. Then he took out his phone and called. Dad, wedding is canceled, the son said coldly. I caught Rosanna with her lover at her house. They not only made love but also planned how to deceive and get more money out of me. She's a bastard. A stupid village bastard worth nothing. But who thinks she is a queen? Marco was shocked by what he heard. Of course, they had lost a lot of the money they invested in this wedding. But the man couldn't understand how Rosanna could treat his son like that. She could because she wanted to. She never needed me, she was only interested in our money. The son shouted. It's entirely my fault. I saw that she was not suitable for family life or the role of a mother, but I kept lying to myself that Rosanna would someday love me. She never loved me, she's a monster. And monsters can only love one person, themselves. After Rosanna's betrayal, something seemed to change in Ivon. He felt a newfound strength. He clearly realized that his former fiancée was just a cover for him, so he wouldn't have to work on himself. Yes, with someone like Rosanna, he no longer felt an internal fear because she didn't make him change. Yes, she didn't need him. In her eyes, there was only money, not him. So, it was convenient for him. On the other hand, there was Toya. She wasn't afraid of anything. She was ready to pull him out of his swamp and carry him on her back up the mountain. She needed him. She wasn't interested in his position or status. She simply didn't care. People like Rosanna would always be parasites. How much he hated her. For almost a week, Ivon disappeared on the fencing track. His anger motivated him to the point where he pushed himself relentlessly. Enough! The coach shouted. Come on, take a break, you can't go on like this. You'll kill yourself by the time the competition comes in a week. I won't, it's okay, Ivon muttered, putting the mask on again. I won't stop. By the start of the competition, Ivon Chela had managed to divert his attention a little. He focused more on the match than on Rosanna and her betrayal. The preliminary fights went smoothly for Ivon. He felt an inner strength within himself. Valeriano often paced around, knowing that Ivon could, but now everything depended solely on him. Valeriano was very anxious. It was a make-or-break moment in his entire coaching career. The competition continued, and Ivon entered the top 6. Valeriano was praying silently. Oh Lord, at least let there be bronze. Ivon, come on. He whispered, suppressing his emotions. Valeriano knew what Ivon Chela's opponents were capable of. One of them, David Castro, had won this award and could be called a fencing genius. Valeriano understood that dealing with him would be very difficult for Ivon. But dealing with the other 4 was quite realistic. Ivon stepped onto the fencing track. He greeted the judges, the opponent, and the audience with his rapier. Alesh. The main judge's command echoed, and the duel began. Yes. Valeriano couldn't contain his emotions. Ivon, come on. You can do it. Valeriano was so tense that he didn't even notice David stepping onto the fencing track. Ivon paled. I won't fight with you, Ivon whispered to himself. I will fight with myself. As soon as he said that, it was as if some shadow had detached from him and overshadowed David. Ivon didn't understand what happened next. He only saw his rapier piercing the dreadful shadow. This is for everything. You deserve that. A voice echoed in his head. I'm not a coward, I don't need you. Die, fear. The judge's command sounded, and the fight stopped. Ivon saw himself standing on a high cliff. Some figures separated from him, plummeting down. He saw its distorted face and heard a cry for mercy, but inside him, there was absolute peace. A minute later, Ivon felt as if he were expanding. Ivon, well done. The coach rushed to him. You did it. He cried, hugging him. Ivon couldn't understand what was happening. David approached him and shook his hand with a smile. Thank you, the guy said. It was the best fight of my life. I've never met opponents like you before. He turned and walked away. Did I win? Ivon looked at Valeriano in shock. Is it true? He couldn't come to his senses. Colleagues from the sports school were crying with joy next to him. Ivon looked at the scoreboard with unseeing eyes. 15-13 in favor of Ivon said, and only now did he realize that he had won in the final. "Oh God! It can't be!" he shouted. It was not just a triumph for Valeriano and his school. It was Ivon's main victory. He finally conquered his fear. There was no more suffocating tension that had prevented him from breathing all his life. After the competition, Ivon returned as a completely different person. He forgot about Rosanna. It seemed to him that all of that happened so long ago that it no longer made any sense to him. Ivon felt such a desire to live. He felt that nothing could stop him anymore. Only forward, he told himself then. I won't stop at this. And it was not about the rapier, but about overcoming himself. The guy clearly realized that his life would change completely now. So, 3 days after returning from the capital, Ivon had a serious conversation with his father. "Dad," the son began. "I'm very grateful to you for what you've done for me, but I'll leave the factory. Now I exactly know what I want to do. Please don't dissuade me. I no longer want to live someone else's life. I want to be myself." Marco felt that it would end like this. He didn't say anything to Ivon. Toya anxiously waited on the bench. The girl decided to wait for another hour and then give up on everything. And when she was about to leave, Ivon pulled up to the blonde's house. Toya was very frightened. "Oh God, what if he kills him now?" she thought. "What have I done?" Toya started crying. She couldn't move. About 15 minutes later, Ivon appeared again, quickly jumped into the car, and drove away. No one came out of the blonde's house for a long time. It was getting dark. Finally, a knock on the gate was heard, and a familiar guy appeared on the street. He hugged the homeowner and spoke loudly. Then a taxi arrived, and it took him away. 2 weeks later, rumors started circulating in the city that Ivon Chela had canceled the wedding. The girl couldn't believe it. Toya, today the guys at work said, her father said during dinner, that supposedly Ivon's bride had a lover, and she made a deal with him to rob Ivon Chela. "Dad, is that really possible?" The daughter asked through tears. After all, sooner or later, she would have been caught. "Well, yes," Roberto replied with a full mouth. Ivon was lucky. You can imagine that everything was revealed a day before the wedding. They say some kind person wrote to him and asked to visit the bride. Who could it be? Toya said in fear. I mean, who could write such a thing to him? Well, it doesn't matter, her mother replied. The main thing is that everything was revealed in time. Ivon just got lucky, some good people crossed his path. The next day, Toya decided to visit the cemetery. She had only a few days left, and the girl was planning to return to the capital. Hello, Giorgio, the girl put flowers on the grave. How are you doing? Toya sat on a bench and closed her eyes. Giorgio Longorio was her favorite teacher. It must be admitted honestly, he liked Toya and Ivon very much. The students often visited his house and engaged in discussions on various topics. He was a very kind and generous person. When Toya came to pick up her documents from the college, she met Giorgio in the corridor. Toya, what's wrong with you? The teacher got scared, seeing her pale face. Something happened? Giorgio. The girl burst into tears and ran to him. I can't take it anymore. Come on, let's go to my place, he said, taking her hand and leading her to his laboratory on the ground floor. My dear Giorgio, I'm leaving for the capital, the student stammered, telling him. As I understand it, you don't want this? The man sighed. Toya, are you sure that this is the best for you? I am, she nodded. I love Ivon very much, but he doesn't love me. He told me himself. My girl, Giorgio hugged her. Ivon is a good guy, but he is currently closed not only to you but also to himself. I'm sure time will put everything in its place. You and Ivon are a wonderful couple. It was the last time Toya met her favorite teacher. In early September, he passed away, and the girl couldn't attend his funeral. Toya? She heard a familiar voice. The girl was even afraid to open her eyes. "What are you doing here?" "Ivon? I came to Giorgio." "I came here for the same reason." He looked at her in surprise. "I didn't know you were in town." "I've been here for almost a month," Toya replied. "I'm leaving the day after tomorrow." "How have you been? Why didn't you tell me anything?" Ivon asked, ignoring her question. "Ivon, we've grown up, each of us has our own affairs." Toya tried to smile. "I heard you got married." "Congratulations." "Thank God, I'm saved." He sighed. "I've always been bad at understanding people, especially women." "And how about you? You're probably married by now." "No," the girl said quietly. "I'm not very lucky with that either. I'm not in a hurry to get married." Ivon sat next to Toya on the bench, and they remained silent for a long time. A light rain started to fall. "Toya, forgive me," Ivon suddenly said. "I was such a fool. I wanted to run away from the best girl in the world, but couldn't." He looked directly into his friend's eyes. "I always knew I loved only you, but I was afraid to admit it to myself." Toya even stopped breathing. It seemed that at that moment, her heart would jump out. "Ivon, please don't," she pleaded. "I won't survive another breakup." "We're not going to part anymore," he said, taking her hand. "Toya, I love you. I've been thinking a lot about you lately. I need to tell you something, even if after this you won't talk to me anymore." Her voice trembled. "It was me. I sent you that text message." "You?" Ivon looked at her in amazement. "But how did you find out about everything?" "It happened completely by chance," the friend replied in a quiet voice. "At first, I saw you with that girl when you got into the car together. Then, again by chance, I saw her in the store. Apparently, she was talking to her lover. On the way out of the store, I bumped into him. He was waiting for her. I don't know why, but I followed where they went by taxi. I was in complete shock when I saw them kissing in the taxi. On that day, something inside me made me go to her house. And when I saw that guy again, I didn't know what to do. A day before that, I met Pancho, and he gave me your phone number. I'm sorry, but I sent you that message." Ivon took Toya's face in his hands and kissed the girl. Then he hugged her tightly. "Thank you," he whispered. "You saved me again. I don't need anyone but you." The young couple was sitting silently by the grave of the man who always knew they would be together. He was the only one who never doubted it. Ivon and Toya bid farewell to their teacher and, holding hands, left the cemetery. They didn't feel like talking about anything. Both of them felt that silence was more important to them at that moment than any words. The rain increased, and the young couple hurried away. "Salvador, come on," Valeriano whispered to himself. "Come on, boy, you deserve this. You've been working towards this for so many years." Ivon Chela nervously paced back and forth near the coach. It wasn't just a fencing championship final, it was his revelation. After Ivon rightfully earned the gold medal at the championship, he realized that his rapier had fulfilled its purpose. He declined the offer to move to the capital and join the Olympic team. After Ivon's victory over Valeriano, they tried for a long time to understand how Ivon managed to overcome his psychological complex. Valeriano felt a lot, but at that time, he couldn't put it into words. "Valeriano, I get it." Ivon came running to him for training one day. "In any sport, we need to train not only muscles and skills, but also free ourselves from internal blocks. I'm not saying that technique isn't important, but right now, I clearly see that it should be 50-50. That is, 50% pure psychology. Do you understand?" "It seems so," Valeriano said. "Ivon, it's so simple." To test his theory in practice, Valeriano and Ivon started training with a new method from Salvador, who had been Ivon's fencing companion for many years. One could say that the boys came to Valeriano's school at the same time. Salvador was characterized by great persistence, while Ivon excelled effortlessly. However, no matter how hard Salvador tried, he couldn't overcome a certain barrier. Salvador knew it himself, deep in his heart. He even envied Ivon. And 3 months later, when Salvador started training in psychology, he simply soared. "Salvador, did you see the shadow?" Ivon approached him after the match. "Your task is to pierce it, not me. Focus on it," he instructed. "Your task is to defeat it. Don't think about anything else for now." "Yes," Valeriano shouted with delight 5 minutes later. "Salvador, you're amazing. Beat that damn shadow. Come on, my boy." Valeriano, of course, took a big risk when Salvador was about to take part in the championship, but he decided to try. And what was unfolding before Ivon and Valeriano's eyes could be called a miracle. "My God, the final fight," Valeriano whispered, watching everything happening. "Ivon, he's in the final. My God, I'm going crazy right now," Valeriano lamented. The man closed his eyes. He was so excited that his head was spinning. What Salvador achieved in reaching the final was the most incredible miracle any man had ever seen. Yes, recently, Salvador had improved a lot, but comparing him to Ivon was impossible. In any case, Salvador was already the 6th rapier. But even greater miracles awaited Valeriano. "Valeriano," Ivon said, "we have the bronze." He froze in front of the coach. Both immediately rushed to the fencing strip. Salvador was sitting on it, crying. The guy, in shock, couldn't even get up. Ivon and the coach approached him. "I got 3rd place." He couldn't stop sobbing. "We won." "Thank you." "You won." Ivon hugged him. "Guys, we did it." Ivon rejoiced. After Salvador's victory, the guys no longer doubted that their system worked. Ivon, Salvador, and Valeriano refined their method for almost a year. During this time, they worked with various psychologists. The day came, and Ivon took their developments to the Ministry of Sports. He was very excited. "You understand that the approach we have today doesn't work," the guy argued before the commission. "That's why the body requires new doping. But we suggest working on psychology simultaneously. Before becoming a coach, an athlete must go through a program with a psychologist. Also, he must study psychology himself. Pedagogy is not so important. It's psychology that matters. If everything is used correctly, we will definitely see results. The more an athlete works on his psychology, the more blocks he removes from himself, and the easier and faster his body moves. You understand that the modern view is a lie. A person is not a product of chemical processes in the brain. It's emotions and thoughts that shape our body, not the other way around." But no one even bothered to listen to him. No one wanted to spend money on trained coaches and athletes in psychology. Everyone was satisfied. "Well, damn you," Ivon cursed. "Then I'll act on my own. I don't need anything from you." Thus, the first center was created, teaching coaches, masters, and teachers psychology. Initially, there were few requests, but after a few years, some began to wonder why this small town took gold and silver in fencing every year. Track and field, and even swimming, joined Valeriano's school. Coaches completed 6-month courses and started teaching children differently. The results were simply stunning. Valeriano, Ivon, and Salvador became the main teachers of the course at the Coaching Psychology Center. Others joined them later. Of course, the bureaucratic system refused to acknowledge the effectiveness of such an approach. But here and there, someone used some elements of the new approach. One day, Ivon and his family went to a big city. And when driving through the central streets, a huge billboard suddenly appeared in front of them. It was an advertisement for an athletic school, with the inscription "Jump higher than your fear" across its entire width. Over the past few years, Ivon Chela's life has seen so many events that the man found it hard to believe. After Ivon and Toya got married, the girl immediately returned to her hometown. She supported her husband all the time. In her hometown, Toya worked for about a year and became pregnant. Ivon probably lasted for about 3 years at the factory. After they launched their own coach training program, he finally quit his father's factory and fully focused on educational activities. Later, Toya joined him. She left her educational center only after giving birth to their 3 children. A few years later, their educational center released several books that helped coaches or teachers improve not only their communication skills with their wards, but also assisted in their personal growth. Over time, the guys started going to various training sessions, which helped develop their system. Almost until the age of 30, I was a very timid person, Ivon usually shared. And I must confess to you, I'm not ashamed of it at all. It's normal to experience fear in the chaotic world we live in. And many go into sports to fight it. That's how it was with me. I thought that if I achieved some significant results, my fear would go away. I nurtured this hope for many years, but to my surprise, everything turned out to be the opposite. Only when I started getting rid of my fears and anxieties did my fencing skills improve. And it was not just me, there are already thousands of us. So, we must be grateful for life, even for fear, because it's a huge opportunity to overcome ourselves. Freedom always hides behind fear.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe to the channel.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my 2nd year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked. We could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick! What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was. As the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their inn. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, "I'm moving to the sales department soon." If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. "Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived." I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. "They look good." "What are you talking about?" "These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one?" As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself. This could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. "Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay?" I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. "Yes, I'm inviting my father." "That's great. I might invite my parents too." I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.